The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Anyone else see it besides Alan and I?
Yeah, I saw it.
And
well,
what do you think?
Here's the thing. I was talking about this yesterday. I don't think it's an awful movie, but here's what I don't get. I mean, as many people have pointed out, it's about a character that was not even named in Tolkien's work. And Helm Hammerhand is a great character, and we hear about his story, but they fabricated a story that is one didn't need to be told. It's now they're like looking in the nooks and crannies because they only have the appendices. They only have the rights to the appendices in Lord of the Rings to make things from. That's why they can't use the Silmarillion. They can't use anything but what was in the Lord of the Rings books. And they're trying to create stories that Tolkien himself might have referred to, but the dialogue, the characterizations, and all of that are completely made up. And even though Philippa Boyens was involved, I was watching this story and I'm like, the Lord of the Rings stories are about the end of the world. They're about the approaching in Tolkien's world, the approaching world that he didn't want to see. He didn't want to see his beloved England torn asunder by industrialization. And metaphorically, they're about the end of an era and the beginning of another era that's not necessarily beneficial. That's what all of this represented. And so you have that sort of apocalyptic feel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And The Hobbit was the story about one man. It refers to all young men who go off, they leave their house for the first time, and they go out into the world. It can be seen as metaphoric to that, which is a story that all men themselves, all boys and girls to a certain extent, everybody really has to go out into the world and see what it's all about. That's why The Hobbit works. And then when you get to Lord of the Rings, it's all about how what you find out there could come back and kick your ass. But that's what life is. Now, when you're watching these stories, War of the Rohirrim was fine as it was, but it was completely needless. It doesn't have the driving idea of the world coming to an end. And even though they tried to give it that with this battle, it's like, who cares? At the end of the day, when you've already seen Lord of the Rings, you've already seen a story about these people banding together to stop the end of the world. Every other story seems,
I think the problem with it was that people read about Helm Hammerhand and thought it was about self-pleasuring. And they were disappointed when it wasn't. I think that was its major failure.
Axel Braun is taking notes right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know what, Rob, you make a good point, though, because I think what happens is people don't have a fundamental idea of why some of these franchises were beloved and were popular. They don't understand the themes that resonated with people, other than the spectacle. Like they see the spectacle and they see that, but it's like, what's really at the heart of the Lord of the Rings and its success? And it's like you said, the fact of what it is that people are up against and what they're battling in this story. That's really why people became fans of this franchise and why it's become so big, because there's spectacle everywhere. But there's only certain stories and properties that have been able to kind of tap in to something that hits us deeper. And they don't understand that. A lot of folks want to adapt, but they don't understand why. Why do we connect to these franchises and these giant IPs the way that we do? Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all of them, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek. It's like they don't get it. And they don't take the time to understand. They just want to hurry up and rush something out because they want to make sure that they keep the property under their, I think that was the reason why this film was fast-tracked, is to keep the property. That's crazy, man. Like, make a good story if you're going to do that.
I think Robert's right. I think maybe we're coming to the conclusion that the Jackson trilogy will never be topped.
Yep.
Well, it was also driven by art, too. I mean, there's also that. Like, where's the art in our current day media? Where is
it? It's disconcerting that this is Philippa Boyens and then like Fran Walsh and Peter. And what are they going to do with the hunt for Gollum? Is it? I would dumbly thought that this was going to be their answer to Rings of Power. As far as Peter Jackson,
I think they only.
Good.
Go ahead, Lane.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I may be behind.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
But as far as Peter Jackson, I think they just tacked him on as executive producer right when marketing was getting ramped up, but he wasn't attached from the beginning. But is that true though, that they just rushed this out to retain the film rights? Because I saw something about discussing film mentioned that Warner Brothers had issued a statement.
I was just gonna say, if I always thought this was gonna be their answer to Rings of Power. They know how much it did brand damage, and they're gonna just try and do something good. But if it was rushed out,
I mean, they do have Andy Serkis. You know, when I was working on the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, I did a piece on the editorial of Two Towers, and Mike Horton, the editor, talks about the fact when they had cut together the original Battle of Helm's Deep, they thought it was the greatest battle sequence ever. But when they started to watch it, they realized you got bored halfway into this spectacle of a battle. And they realized why you got bored was there's no point of view. So what they started to do was they wove in all of our characters. They wove in Legolas. They wove in Aragorn. They wove in Theoden. So you were always going back to the characters that we care about in the midst of this spectacle. And once you had those characters and you were seeing what each one of those individual characters was doing, well, then the battle became, as they called it, tasty. Well, they called it a tasty battle sequence at first. And that lesson of one sequence in one gigantic spectacle of a movie is the lesson I don't think people learned. Look, we've seen it all. You can watch a bomb being dropped on a battleship in Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor, a point of view shot. We'd never seen that before. That was spectacle. Now it was old hat. Once it's done once. But you see a character that makes you believe. You see an actor with a little bit of water, a tear about to fall down someone's cheek. You're with that character. It doesn't matter what's going on. And I think that's forgotten. Again, people are saying, okay, this movie needs to have this stuff in it in order for the audience to love it. What a story needs is great characters and a good story. It doesn't matter how much spectacle you have.
I will say that in spoiler alert, in Godzilla -1, when the love interest woman pushed the main character into the alleyway to protect him from the giant blast, and she got taken away, I was ready to lose it.
Same.
Yeah.
Like,
Same.
holy,
that was so emotional.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm verklimping right now.
In a Godzilla movie.
cry.
Yeah.
If they can make you believe with a giant lizard, it takes a deft hand, but you can make people believe and even be emotionally invested in a Godzilla movie if you know what you're doing.
Well, we wanted those two characters to come together. And, I'm still debating in my mind whether she should have survived, but that's a different discussion.
She should have.
Yeah.
But
people like happy endings.